First, leadership and leaders. Leadership emphasizes the act of leading and the importance of following. A leader must have followers or the leadership function doesn't exist. Leadership is the exercise of influence by the person over another. Letter A. Leadership and management are often used synonymously. Management refers to the process of achieving results through people and resources, include organizing, planning, influencing, and controlling. Letter B. Leadership and authority differ. Authority is the formal right to command, set group goals, and direct people's efforts toward achieving those goals. Letter C. Leadership and motivation. Leaders have the ability to influence people and they should be aware of motivational theories to be effective. Second topic. Techniques for organizing work and delegating authority. To meet the organizational goals include letter A. Principles of organization are generalization that may be applied in various management situations. Letter B. The organization process establishes a grouping of persons with needed equipment and materials to meet objectives. Letter C. Line authority is direct authority. Staff authority is the right granted by top management. Letter D. Authority is the right to command. The right to exercise the legitimate power includes line, staff, and functional. Leadership and organizational purpose. Positions of leadership are established in work settings to help organizational subunits to achieve the purpose for which they exist. Within the larger system, this perspective of leadership is a functional one, meaning that leadership is at the service of collective effectiveness. Flashman et al. 1991, Hackman and Walton 1986. Lord 1977, senior organizational leaders generally carry the construction of, organizational purpose and direction. History and rationale of SBM to set the content for examining the relationship between school-based management approaches and other school variables. Larry Coban, in his 1990 article on the cyclical nature of educational reform efforts, points out that school systems at the turn of the century were for the most part small and locally operated. SBM or antidote to bureaucracy. School-based management is an excellent antidote to bureaucracy. An equally significant concern is the repeated failure of centralized structures to inspire in school personnel the prerequisite attitudes and behaviors for bringing about educational improvement. Mojowski and Fleming 1988 echo the findings of many other researchers and writers, noting that a school improvement impetus and authority emanating from outside the school does not produce the responsibility and commitment necessary to sustain consequential improvement.
Leadership and power. A related power is the motivational factor that provides the leader with the ability to influence behavior. Empowerment employees. Empowerment requires self-leadership and grants individuals the power to lead others. Empowerment, it is an extension of delegation in which the power and responsibility for a relevant decision making is extended to the employee as long as he or she has knowledge, power, and resources necessary for success.
Leadership as non-routine influence. Leadership does not reside in the routine activities of organizational work. Instead, it occurs in response to or in anticipation of non-routine organizational events. These defining elements was suggested by Cogs and Kahn 1978, who considered the essence of organizational leadership to be the influential increment over and above mechanical compliance with the routine directives of the organization. Rules changes under SBM. According to the growing body of implementation research, the major impact is that the rules of all educational stakeholders, superintendents, other central office personnel, board members, principals, teachers, other school staff, and often parents, community members, and students are profoundly affected.
The district. It is virtually impossible. Superintendents' experience in districts that have tried school-based management has shown that strong support from the superintendent is absolutely necessary for its proper implementation. Central office staff. The role of this personnel shifts from a primary focus on giving directiveness and monitoring compliance to serving the school. Under school-based management, and particularly in those settings where school-based management is accompanied by board decision-making, the role of all school personnel undergoes significant changes. Principals. Under SBM, it is the role of the principal that is subject to the greatest degree of change. Assistant principals and department heads. The role of these people involves towards serving as advocates with principals on behalf of teachers. Teachers have often been isolated from involvement in significant decisions making and from frequent and meaningful contact with one another. Students have traditionally been isolated from operational and policy decisions. Parents and community members. Parents and community representatives have generally been relatively uniform and underutilized regarding decisions and operations. Developing leadership ability. Developing leadership ability takes place in the context of the workplace. Expertise and empathy can be learned in every situation.
A. Developing leadership ability is a lifelong endeavor. B. Gaining knowledge and experience in a variety of ways and settings in part of the process. C. Types of knowledge include political, bureaucratic, technical, and professional. D. Gaining power and using it effectively is important in both personal and professional situations. Power and influence result in effective coordinations of both people and projects in the course of achieving goals. E. Develop affiliation and support from subordinates, peers, and supervisors. Leaders should pay close attention to those that are already leaders, groups of firm leaders. F. Supporting supervisors forms an important alliance. Affiliations that succeed depends on accepting the lines of authority, identifying with the organization goals, and learning how to communicate within the organization. G. Coordinate projects to complete them efficiently. This is a major task of management. It involves planning, organizing, and directing people and resources to complete the projects in a timely manner. TQM as an important technique involved from Woodward's deeming belief in total quality as a constant standards of industry. He advocated the use of statistical measures to track quality. Leaders as managing social and cognitive phenomena. Most definition of leadership stressed social or interpersonal influence processes as the key elements, thus persuasions, the management of social and political processes, and the use of social power or ubiquitous constructs in the leadership literature. In addition, as suggested by the problem-solving perspective, the exploration of effective cognitive processes is equally critical to leader effectiveness. Obstacle to the success of SBM. Much of the literature in school-based management is concerned with the problems direct and school have experience with it. Some of their implementations problem, some arise in connection with operating SBM structure, and it will instill other have to do with the failure of many SBM arrangements to bring about the results desired by the school and directed personnel and other stakeholders. Types of organization. Types of organization have different views and structures. There are three main views. Classical organizational theory uses strict structures. It was developed along with a strict military and government bureaucratic structures. Neoclassical organizational theory began an criticism of classical theory because it didn't reflect what really happened in an organization. Contemporary organizational theory looks at the organization as a system composed of people, formal structures, small groups, rules, and physical environment.
14. Success of empowerment in the workplace comes from its many advantages and few disadvantages. However, careful steps should be taken to be sure that all the elements come together for success. 15. Leadership and the organizational context. Leading in the organizational context means directly and indirectly influencing and aligning individual and team efforts toward fulfillment of the organization's purpose through systems, processes, and structures. Most theories of organizational leadership in the psychological literature are largely context-free. For example, leadership is typically considered without adequate regard for the structural considerations that affect and moderate its conduct. We maintain, however, that organizational leadership cannot be modeled effectively without attending to such considerations. What has been argued about leadership at different organizational levels? The first pattern concerns the administrative use of existing organizational structures to maintain effective organizational operations. The second leadership pattern occurring at middle organizational levels involves the embellishment and operationalization of formal structure elements. The third pattern of organizational leadership, which occurs at the top of organizations, concerns structural origination or change in the organization as a reflection of new policy formulations. In stakeholders' attitudes towards school-based management, several researchers address the subject of the attitudes towards school-based management held by those who have been involved in SBM efforts. School staff members generally perceive their schools as being more responsive under decentralized arrangement, with responsiveness defined as the ability to adapt resources and procedures to student needs. However, enthusiasm for SBM on the part of school staff has been shown to decline if the practice continues over a significant period of time and few or no improvements are noticed in working conditions or student outcomes. Parent and student satisfaction with the school has been shown to increase under school-based management. Surveys of principals have consistently shown a high degree of satisfaction with the move to school-based management, even though they also say that their workload has increased.